Hey, it's Rich, Tennessee Homestead. How the heck are you today? I'm over here at the chicken coop. Got another Australorp broody. We've been taking the eggs out from underneath her, making her very unhappy. I'll tell you what, these are the broodiest chickens I've ever run across in my entire life. I've never seen anything quite like them. I was talking with a customer of ours over the weekend, and they were telling us that we had sold them some smaller chicks and also some laying hens, and they were 3 Australorp laying hens, and she was amazed that 2 of the 3 have gone broody and are sitting on eggs. Of course, she's thrilled with it, but like I told her, I said, well, you know, there kind of goes your egg production for a bit, doesn't it? And she's good with it. But anyway, yeah, broodiest breed I've ever seen. We got a thunderstorm coming in, so we may get some company piling through this door in a minute or two. Lord, these guys are some mess makers. I got to get to culling some chickens. I've got 4 Buff Orpingtons over here they've quit laying, and now they've decided instead of using the roost, they're roosting on top of this here, something they have never done before. And man, I'll tell you what, they'd left me quite a mess. So it was like, okay, you girls aren't producing. Now you'd be turning into mess makers. So hate to say it, but these guys are going to have to go. I got their replacements over in the Americana cage, so it's just going to have to happen. Anyway, so yeah, so I'm over here in chicken coop. Just finished this up over here in this larger coop. And let's see. Oh yeah, the reason, one of the things I want to talk to you about today, gardening. Now you'd think I'd be out in the garden, but no, it's pouring down rain right now. It's really getting a little nuts. These chickens, I guess, are huddled against the side of the barn to try to stay out of the wind. Gardening. I guess the thing I'm noticing out there is, man, I'll tell you what, they're coming up with some of the doggonedest, here, I'll get over here and show you one ticked off little hen. Some of the darndest things I've seen. You know, they're talking about all these different techniques and using compost teas and, you know, all this other kind of stuff that really gets pretty intense. And I guess if you're living in a part of the country that you're like, I lived for quite a few years out in Las Vegas, and you know, man, it was hard to get anything to grow there. But you know, the thing of it is I was talking with this couple that I'd put on did a video about them a while back. They had bought a farm that went under, and turned it around, doing real good with it. And I was quite impressed with his garden, and we got to talking. And it's a conventional garden. He's not using any mulches or anything else. He just runs through it with a hoe, and there you go. But really high yielding garden. So in talking with him, he was telling me that he said, you know, he said, there's a secret to this. He says, when we use the greenhouse, he said, we're growing plants that we sell. He said, you know, we use compost and garden soils and so forth, he said, mixed in. He said, to get good-looking plants, he said, that we sell. He said, but the ones that I do for my garden, he said, all that bedding is done with the soil out of the garden. And I told him, I said, well, that kind of makes sense. He said, yeah. He said, you know, he raises those plants from seedlings in his greenhouse, but he utilizes the soil that these plants are going to go back into. And he said, yeah, he said, you don't get 100% germination, and he says, and some plants come up, he said, and they're not doing real well in the soil. We're going to start getting company here in a minute. But he's like, you know, but it's one of those things, he says, where if they can't thrive in the soil, he said, what's going to happen if I take those plants out and put them in that soil that they're not thriving in? He said, so what he does is he plants a seed in his greenhouse in the soil that he's got, he's going to be using for his garden, and, you know, picks the best plants and puts them in his garden. Yeah, that's one of the most common sense approaches I've heard in gardening in quite some time. It's like you said, you can grow some beautiful plants, he says, in Miracle-Gro. Because when you put them in the dirt in your garden, he said a lot of them are going to go into shock. He said they're not going to produce well. He said all these sort of things. And they're all being hesitant because I'm standing in here to come through that door. But sooner or later they're going to get stacked up on that walk and going to push these girls in. But and he says in that way, you know, if he's using the best plants that he could germinate in his greenhouse and grow in the soil that he uses in his garden, he says when there's a transplant, he said when we move them, he said there's not quite as much shock. He said they take root good, and he said they really thrive. And I told him, you know, that just makes good sense. I said that's the way it would work. And he's got a high-producing garden, no two ways about it. So, you know, there's a thought, folks, you know, maybe he's got something going on there. Just use the dirt you got and go with it unamended, and let your seeds germinate in there. And you know, what doesn't take, and the ones that do, and go with the best you got. And I'll tell you what, it was amazing the production he was getting out of his plants. I don't know what you're squawking about, but knock it off. I'm talking here. Anyway, yeah, these Australorp girls, they're a mess. But yeah, just something for y'all to come and mull around. It's I know it's not the trendy thing to say or do, and I know that in different locations in this country, you got to do different things. Like I said, in Las Vegas, you put a tomato plant flat into the ground, I don't care how much water you dump on it, it's going to be dead in a week because the quality of the soil isn't there. So, you know, it's something to think about. Get your soil tested at your local extensions. Know what you got to have to get it squared away. You know, he used compost. I think he's running about 100 head now of cattle. He's got goats and pigs and chickens, so you know, he mixes in quite a bit of compost with it. And but he uses that same soil that he uses in his garden for his greenhouse plants that he's going to plant in his garden. Makes just some good common sense. Never really thought about it like that, because him and I were talking that you know, that I was getting ready to put a greenhouse in, and he said, well, you know, don't make the mistake a lot of folks do. He said, when you put your greenhouse in, he says, do it this way. He says, and that way your plants, when they come up, they're used to your garden soil. They're not as shocky, and he says, and they really blossom. So that's just a little tip for you. Hopefully it'll work out. But like I said, you know, I see some of this stuff, and you begin to wonder by the time you get done buying all the different things that you have to buy to, you know, follow these new programs. Come on in, girls. I know it's starting to rain. You wonder just how much money you're actually saving by growing it yourself at that kind of rate. Because I've seen some folks that really put some money out there. There's some programs that you know, where they come with all the fertilizers you need and so forth. And, you know, it could get pretty costly pretty quick. Something to mull around, something to think about. I was kind of impressed with the guy's garden. Like I said, he had some real high production going on there with his vegetables, and he said that's primarily what it was that he used the greenhouse to get an early start, get his plants up, but they were in the soil that they were going to be transplanted into. And he says that he says they've done it for a couple of years now. He says, and it just seems to work out well. So, just a thought, kind of watching the parade come in here. They're all looking around going, wait a minute, you changed the bedding. What's this? This is one of our newer roos. His head stuck in the door. Come on in, little guy. You're fine. Yeah, these roosters are kind of shuffling around for options of who's gonna lead the group here. And it looks like one of the Australorp roosters, he's a pretty good sized boy, he seems to be taking charge. And Henry, as long as it's not one of his girls, he doesn't much care. But we got a new rooster who seems to be pretty much running the Australorp girls, so he's a big boy. So him and Captain Jack still go at each other back and forth, so it ought to get interesting. Anyway, that's all I got for today. It's just kind of one of them common sense things that made sense on, you know, if you got decent soil and you start running them in the greenhouse, you know, go ahead and start your plants in the soil you're going to plant them in. And, you know, I know it's very successful for these folks. I've not had a greenhouse, so I haven't tried that. Next year we probably will. Because like I said, I was very impressed with the results he was getting out of his garden. And he's just using conventional, you know, plant the row and break out the hoe kind of gardening. But let me tell you something, he works on it, you know, and he keeps the weeds down. And, I was highly impressed that it was such a clean garden. He takes a lot of pride in it. So anyway, that's all from here. Hope this finds you having an absolutely wonderful day, and we will talk to you folks later.